So another thing I want to talk about learning and failure, because failure is such a big subject nowadays. Because this concept of perfectionism has really prevented people from allowing themselves to fail. I feel like one of the key things to understand about learning is that actually learning is about balancing an ecosystem, or basically learning is about ecosystem, because if whether you learn how to bike or whatever it is, you need a certain number of skill sets that actually need to work together in coordination as a system for it to work. So if you're learning how to bike, you need to learn how to have eye-hand coordination, where you learn how to essentially balance yourself. And balancing is one skill set. And you need to learn how to pedal, and then you need to actually see where you're going. And so you need to be able to actually pedal and balance yourself without having to actually pay attention to it, so that you can pay attention to where you're going. And then you need to be able to turn the handlebar, and so on and so forth. So as you can see that you need to be able to actually have a number of skill sets work as a system where they are balanced. So the ecosystem itself needs to be balanced. So the skill sets that you have, they need to work together where there's a balance between them. And so while you're balancing, you need to be able to pedal. If you pedal too hard and you can't maintain your balance, then you fall. If you turn too sharply, that is greater than your ability to balance, you will fall. If you're not able to pay attention where you're going, then you will crash into things. And so as you can see, it is the balance between all the different skill sets that you have, that ecosystem, the balanced ecosystem, is actually the goal of learning. So when you learn something, you basically learn things step by step until you can balance the ecosystem. Now, here's an interesting thing about balancing an ecosystem that I think is actually really critical. When your skill set, let's say for instance your ability to pedal is lacking, then you need to increase that. But when you increase it, invariably at some point, it's gonna exceed the skill set of some of the other things. And when that balance is disrupted, so it's kind of going to be interesting where in the very beginning, when the particular skill set is lacking, so let's say for instance you can balance on a bike and you can balance yourself short, like a certain amount, and you can't pedal hard enough to balance yourself. So you balance yourself and then you fall off. You balance yourself and then you fall off, and so on and so forth. And then you start pedaling well. So there's a point where your pedaling is not enough, so you fail. As an ecosystem, because the system is not balanced. And then it comes a point where you can now finally pedal and you can actually maintain the balance, and then you start feeling really good. And then you start trying to pedal harder, and then you fall again because your balance, for instance, can't keep up. Let's say, for instance, in this particular case, your balance can't keep up with how hard you're pedaling with your legs, and then it starts wobbling, and then you fall. So your core strength isn't enough. And so in that case, again, you exceeded the balance, and therefore you failed. Now, here's an interesting thing, that where failure is important, failure gives us feedback as to what to do next. And so you need to know the limit of your balance point to not push beyond it. And so if you haven't failed, you don't know actually where the limitations of each of your skill sets are. So you don't know where the failure points are. And if you don't know where the failure points are, you cannot improve and you cannot grow, which is the very definition of learning, meaning as in to be able to balance the system better and better over time until you have a really well-balanced system where no matter what happens, you can pretty much keep it balanced or make it much more likely for that to happen. And so within this model, failure is actually critical. Not only is it necessary or inevitable, but actually it is critical for your learning and actually for the well-being of the overall system, because it's a part of understanding what the system is doing. And so I wanted to kind of just give this perspective so that our resistance to failure changes, because we realize we're not trying to be courageous enough to fail. We want to see failure different. We want to see failure as our friend. We want to see failure as necessary, not only inevitable, but necessary and healthy and as part of the whole system and actually something you want. You want to know where your failure points are because if you don't know where your growth edge is. And so with that, I want to just say learning or growth. Growth is a balancing act of your ecosystem between your success and failure points. Yeah, hopefully you found this helpful. Thank you.